Welcome to the eCommerce Badassery podcast, the place for scrappy female entrepreneurs who want to learn actionable steps and strategies to grow the traffic, sales, and profit in your e-commerce business. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster, a 20-year retail veteran who spent 3 years as the only employee of a 7-figure online store. That shit was crazy. I know exactly how it feels to do all the things, and I'm sharing everything I learned the hard way so you don't have to. I may have started this business by accident, but supporting badass bosses like you lights me the fuck up, and I am so stoked to see you grow. Are you ready, babe? Let's roll. Welcome back to the eCommerce Badassery podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster. Now that we're halfway through January, it's time to start finalizing your plans for the year. For many businesses, this is something you would have done in December, but there's a reason why the fiscal year for a typical retail business is actually February through January versus January through December. January is really a continuation of December and the true closeout of the year for product-based businesses. Now, from an accounting perspective, I don't necessarily recommend you make the switch because it's a bit of a pain in the butt, but talk to your accountant if that's of interest to you. My whole point in sharing this is to remind you that you're not actually behind. So if you were feeling that way, please don't. When I first sat down to map out this episode, which was going to be about setting goals for the year, I realized I've actually already done that here on the podcast. So instead, I'm going to build on a few different concepts we discussed previously so you can get a better sense of how to take action from the information you have in front of you. If you haven't already, or if you think you need a refresher, then I would definitely go back and take a listen to those other episodes so you have a full understanding of what we're talking about today. First is episode 93. All the ways to grow your e-commerce business. That's where we dive into all the numbers so you figure out which growth levers you should be focusing on in your business right now. Essentially, it helps you break down all of your KPIs, your key performance indicators, traffic, conversion, AOV, and helps you identify which of those you should focus on first. Because remember, you can't do all the things at the same time. The second is episode 41, Setting Goals Like an E-commerce Badass. This is where we talk through how to break down your goals over the quarters, months, and even weeks to make them more attainable and keep your momentum going. Today's episode sits in the middle of these two. Once you have the numbers and you know what KPI you want to focus on, we're going to use traffic as the example today. How do you know what the right move for your particular business at this particular moment is? There are a lot of different ways to drive traffic to your store. I talk about them in episode 123, but you can't focus on all of them at once. I mean, you could, but you either need a really big team to do all the work or you're going to do them poorly. Instead, I want to show you how you can use the data in front of you and the characteristics of your particular business and product to choose one traffic driving strategy to focus on first. Once you nail that down, you can move on to another one. This is essentially a decision tree that I created for lounge members. So if they wanted to grow their traffic, they could determine what made the most sense for them right now. How do they go about it? So the first question I always ask, do you have more time or do you have more money? You rarely get fast and cheap. So if you don't have money to invest, be prepared for your growth to be slow. If you're in a rush, you might want to scrape up some pennies. First, we'll go down the more money path. The next question is, are you eligible to advertise on Facebook? If you are, as in you don't sell a product like CBD or something else that is restricted, then the next question is to look at your margin. If it's at least 60%, then great, try Facebook ads. But what if your margin isn't 60% or your product is restricted and you can't advertise on Facebook? Well, then the next question to ask yourself is, are people searching the internet for the product that you sell? If you're selling CBD, then the answer is probably yes. All right, so we know that customers are searching the internet for your products, but we also know that your margin is less than 60%. Well, is it at least 40%? If it's at least 40%, then Google Ads is probably a great option for you. But if your margin is not at least 40%, then I would work on that before you invest any money into driving traffic. So what if your margin isn't 60% and it's not a product people search for on the internet? Well, in that case, I recommend you focus on influencer marketing. Are you following along here? All right, so that was the more money path. Now let's go down the more time path. Because if you don't have money to invest in advertising or influencer marketing, then what do you do? Well, first I want to look at your repeat customer rate. Is it at least 20%? That's the average for a typical e-commerce store. If you're at 20%, awesome. Then I want to know, are people searching the internet for a product like yours? If they are, then focus on SEO and Google Shopping, which you can get started with for free. If they're not searching the internet for your products, then I'm going to recommend social media and collaborations with other small business owners. But what if your customer return rate isn't at 20% yet? Well, first, is your product consumable? If it is, that means you have a built-in opportunity for repeat business, but you're not quite hitting the mark yet. And those are the least expensive sales to get. So in that case, focus on email marketing. Get that return rate up before you do anything else. If your product isn't consumable, but you have a wide enough assortment that customers still tend to shop with you at least once every 90 days, I'm also going to recommend that you focus on email marketing. Remember, it's a lot easier to get a repeat purchase than it is to get a brand new one. If neither of those is true, your product is not consumable and your customers don't shop with you all that often, then we're going to go back to that question again of, are they searching the internet for your products? If yes, guess what? SEO and Google Shopping. Otherwise, social and collaborations. Do you see how the numbers and the specifics of your business are driving the decision making here? And the great thing about this exercise is that the answer you get today won't necessarily be the answer you get in 3 to 6 months from now, because those variables are going to change. For instance, maybe you go through this exercise right now and you realize you have to work on your email marketing. Once you dial that in and you get your return customer rate up to that 20% benchmark, then you can focus on your SEO or your collaborations next time around. But I don't want you to try and do email marketing and collaborations and SEO all at one time. Just get really good at something and then go do the next thing. If you're starting with all of these organic options, once you make your way through them and you start to generate enough revenue, maybe you'll be in a place that you can revisit this process, but go down the paid path because now you have money to invest. My goal for you is to focus your energy on the thing that makes sense for your business today, to be intentional in the things that you do and not choose something just because it sounds cool or sexy. I can't remember which episode it was, but I know recently I talked about how often I see entrepreneurs get FOMO when they see another business doing something or they hear about some specific strategy, even sometimes when they hear me talk about it on the podcast. But not every strategy is right for every business at any given time. And look, there are so many variables at play here. Every single business, product, history, entrepreneur, the type of business you want to build, it's all different. And all of those variables should be put into the consideration here and this decision-making process. But I hope just going through some of these more high-level questions has given you a little glimpse into how you can start analyzing your own business to decide what makes sense for you right now. Make sure you check out episodes 93 and 41 to get the full picture of this goal setting and planning how you're going to execute everything. And of course, if growing traffic to your website is one of your current focuses, check out episode 123, where I walk you through how to drive traffic to your e-com website. If you're still feeling overwhelmed and don't know where to go next in your business, I invite you to join me in my monthly membership, The Lounge. I'll stick a link in the show notes where you can get all of the details. As you sit down to plan out the rest of your year, be intentional, let the numbers do the talking, and remember that there is no one right way to grow a business. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, friend, and I'll see you on the flip side. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're looking to surround yourself with more product entrepreneurs who totally get your life right now, get your booty on over to the eCommerce Badassery Facebook group. Can't wait to see you there. Until next time, e-commerce friends, stay badass.